The John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. opened in 1971, with the world premiere of a Leonard Bernstein's theater piece. My first personal contact with Mr. Bernstein came on the night of the first annual Kennedy Center Honors in 1978. I spent most of the first part of the program acting as host in the VIP lounge of the Opera House. At intermission, a very illustrious crowd began to pour into the room. As usual, we had background music coming through speakers, and I was unconsciously swaying to its rhythm when I caught Leonard Bernstein's eye. Bernstein was also gently swaying, and he danced across to me, took my hand, and began to twirl me around. Our dance was quite brief and light-hearted, and he was soon circulating to greet friends, but the maestro certainly made a vivid first impression. The following year, the Vienna State Opera employed Bernstein to conduct Fidelio. He delivered superb Beethoven, but during the interlude before the final scene, his terpsichorean talents once again got the better of him. I was sitting quite near the pit, and just prior to the piece's magnificent finale I was startled to see Bernstein suddenly crouch down, and then launch himself straight up in the air as if shot by a rocket to magnify the drama of his concluding downbeat. When he was not conducting, Bernstein was always smoking. It didn't seem to matter to him where he was, as he normally seemed oblivious to his surroundings anyway. A couple of years later I traveled to New York to review a controversial film of Wagner's Parsifal. Before the prelude concluded, my friends and I were disturbed by a constant chatter that emanated from a plume of smoke drifting forward from the row behind us. The voice sounded familiar. My suspicions were confirmed when I turned toward the source of the annoyance. There was Bernstein entertaining a retinue of young people. Clearly, he was oblivious that others might prefer their Wagner with neither his smoke nor commentary. We retreated to a less combustible part of the theater. In the 1950s, Bernstein wrote the one-act opera entitled Trouble in Tahiti. In the 80s he revised it into a full-length opera called A Quiet Place. It was this version which was chosen to reopen the Kennedy Center Opera House after a major renovation, which included refurbishing the seats and installing a plush new carpet. To facilitate his rehearsals, Bernstein ordered a large desktop laid across several rows of seats near the front of the theater. There he sat day after day, chain-smoking, and nonchalantly dropping each cigarette and then grinding it into that new carpet. When the preparations were finally over, Bernstein's premiere rapidly approached. A staff member had to carefully cut out a large section of the ruined carpet with a carpenter's knife, and take it to the manufacturer to make an exact match for size and color before returning to glue it back in place. For those of us who were aware of it, it served as a constant reminder of the man who was easily the most eccentric genius ever to grace us with his presence. Leonard Bernstein passed away on October 14, 1990. His life was devoted to music. Aside from his own compositions, he was one of the great conductors and educators of his era. But when the music stops, I always smile remembering my own odd nights at the opera.